Alright guys, so Total War has a huge problem right now that I don't think enough people are talking about. All of the Total War games up until Attila, which includes Warhammer 1, Napoleon, Empire, Rome 2, Shogun 2, Medieval 2, all of these games attract tens of thousands of players because their design, content, and moddability remain unmatched in the genre and, they're very popular settings. But these games that we all love are limited by the same outdated technical framework that CA for some reason refuses to update. They're all still running on 32-bit architecture. This is a serious and growing barrier to performance, stability, and long-term compatibility that you should care about. As we've seen, modern platforms are shifting rapidly towards more exclusive 64-bit support. That means that these awesome games are at risk of degrading over time, losing modding support, and eventually becoming completely unplayable. So in this video, I want to talk about why it's time for Creative Assembly to address this massive problem. It's not only the right thing to do, it's also clearly possible, proven to make a difference, and well worth the investment in both community trust and long-term viability. So first and foremost, Feral Interactive, the studio responsible for maintaining Total War's Mac ports and the mobile ports as well, recently delivered a native 64-bit version of Rome 2 Total War for Apple Mac OS. This was required because macOS no longer supports any 32-bit software, so their solution was to upgrade the game to comply with 64-bit standards, and the result wasn't just functional, it was a noticeable upgrade. Players reported vastly faster campaign load times, dropping from minutes to seconds, dramatically smoother performance during battles, and much higher memory usage. A friend of mine testing it saw VRAM usage spike above 25 gigabytes, something simply impossible under the limitations of 32-bit. And these aren't minor gains, guys. They speak directly to performance, usability, and modern hardware utilization. This version of Rome 2 on Mac offers a glimpse of what all pre-Thrones of Britannia Total War games could become if they were updated similarly on Windows. And it's worth saying, the limitations of 32-bit architecture are very well known, but they manifest in especially problematic ways in games like Total War that demand high CPU and memory bandwidth. A 32-bit application can only access around 3.5 gigabytes of RAM, regardless of how much is physically available. And this restriction causes a massive amount of problems: texture stuttering during battles, long campaign turn times, unexplained crashes during late game saves especially, and frequent out-of-memory errors when using large overhaul mods like DEI or MK1212, which all of you will know very well, especially in the late game. In many cases, the only solution is to reduce visual settings or remove mods entirely, undermining the very reason players still engage with these games. 64-bit versions of them would immediately eliminate these constraints. It would allow games to use all available system memory, opening the door to more stable campaigns, better battle performance, and vastly improved mod support. Speaking of modding in particular, this is hugely affected by the memory ceiling as well. The Total War community is one of the most productive in the PC gaming world. Mods like Degrading Impera, MK1212, Imperial Splendor, and many more have kept these games alive, fresh, and challenging for over a decade. Yet they operate within tight limitations imposed by the 32-bit engine. In Rome 2, players are hard limited to around 35 mods before the game starts behaving erratically, with 3D models disappearing, campaign maps bugging out, or scripts simply failing to load. These limits don't reflect user hardware, they're engine-based, stemming from the inability of the 32-bit architecture to handle larger loads. Script-heavy mods can also cause performance degradation or campaign instability, especially when layered together. Moving to 64-bit, like we saw in Rome Remastered by the way, would give modders room to build bigger, more stable systems without worrying about breaking the game. It would create space for larger rosters, more nuanced battle mechanics, better campaign scripting, and higher fidelity textures, all while reducing the risk of crash issues and incompatibilities. Also, there is a big misconception that 64-bit support would only be useful for memory access, which is not true. The benefits extend into broader performance characteristics. Modern CPUs, whether from Intel or AMD, are heavily optimized for 64-bit code. The move to 64-bit enables more efficient register usage, faster math operations, better memory addressing. These missed gains are not theoretical. Players often experience sluggish AI behavior or campaign turns taking more than 30 seconds, even on high-end machines. That is no longer acceptable for games that are still being sold today and played by thousands of players. Another dimension to consider in all of this is a shift to 64-bit doesn't automatically improve a game's graphics. It enables higher memory usage, which can directly affect how assets are streamed, loaded, and maintained in real time. Texture pop-in, shadow glitches, resolution downgrades can often be traced back to VRAM limitations. In a 64-bit environment, the game simply can hold much more visual data in memory, which allows for smoother transitions, cleaner presentation, especially at higher resolutions like 1440p or 4K. This is especially important now that ultra-wide monitors, higher refresh rates, and multi-monitor setups are increasingly common. Without an upgrade to 64-bit, players will continue to hit memory-related bottlenecks that force them to lower settings, even when their systems are easily capable of running the game at higher fidelity. Cough cough, Attila. And finally, there is an even larger pressing concern with all of this: future compatibility of the Total War games. Apple has already removed 32-bit support entirely from its operating system. Microsoft has begun removing support from libraries and toolsets required to run 32-bit applications. Driver-level support from AMD, Nvidia, and Intel is also phasing out 32-bit pipelines, focusing instead on 64-bit DirectX and Vulkan optimization. The point I'm trying to make is there will come a time, maybe very soon, when these older Total War games pre-Thrones of Britannia simply stop working on a modern machine without complicated workarounds or community-built hacks. That scenario wouldn't just frustrate players, but also call into question why these games are still being sold on digital storefronts. Preventing that outcome is entirely possible right now, but waiting too long will turn a solvable problem into a crisis of software preservation. And what makes this even more frustrating is how easy this seems in light of the work already done. The Apple 64-bit version of Rome 2 proves that it can be done. This isn't a matter of CA needing to start from scratch to rebuild these games from the ground up. A 64-bit Windows port could reuse much of this back-end work done by Feral Interactive, and plus, CA already has experience maintaining multiple engine versions for other platforms. They are clearly more than capable of managing an internal effort to upgrade the 32-bit titles, especially those with active communities, big active communities, Rome 2, Attila, Medieval 2. Even if the transition is done gradually, starting with just one of these, it would send a clear message to the community that these games are being taken seriously as long-term investments. A good example of this is Skyrim's move to 64-bit via the Special Edition, which was met with some, initial reactions and backlash negatively, which I can totally understand. I'm not asking CA to relaunch the games with a hefty price tag and call it a special edition, but it quietly laid the groundwork for one of the biggest modding expansions Skyrim has ever seen. And today, nearly every modding tool and content hub has moved to supporting SSE as the standard. Bethesda continues to generate revenue from its Creation Club content, largely because the 64-bit platform allowed the game to scale past technical limitations. The same is possible here in Total War, and while, like I said, the franchise does not need a paid content system, CA doesn't need to remake these games or pour hundreds of developers into a full rebuild. They simply need to make them stable, future-proofed, and compatible with modern systems. A 64-bit upgrade would achieve exactly that, while also offering tangible, immediate benefits to modders, longtime players, and newcomers alike. The fact that performance, memory, and modding potential could all increase without too much effort makes this one of the most worthwhile technical updates the studio could pursue. It respects the legacy, honors the modding community, and ensures that players who bought these games will still be able to enjoy them for many years to come. Either way, I personally think CA will probably end up doing this. It's in their best interest to keep supporting older titles through updates to continue their longevity, which arguably is still a revenue source for them. And it's an easy win with the community and modding projects. Hopefully they do it, but if they don't, it would be a massive blunder on their part. And that's essentially it for today, guys. Give the video a like, subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. And if you do believe in everything I've discussed here, share it with CA, share it across your communities. Let them know that this is something they need to do for the longevity of the series. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.